So I can remember, this was probably 5 or 6 years ago. I can remember having a friend who had a friend. I guess they're still friends, but had a friend. And this friend of my friends drove an Aston Martin convertible. Price tag at least 150K. Like, this car was awesome. You turn it on, the whole neighborhood could hear it. It just sounded phenomenal. And like I said, it was a convertible. So you put the top down, put that sucker in manual, and you just let that engine rev. It sounded so sweet. It drove so sweet. And what was really cool was that this friend of a friend actually asked me to clean it for him. Now, at that time, I was like head first into detailing cars. Like, I was just, that was kind of my business I was doing at the time, detailing cars. And to just be honest with you, like, he was like, hey, I'd love for you to clean this car. Here's the keys. Put the top down. Go have some fun in it. And then once you're done driving it, take it home, clean it, and bring it back to me. And I was like, hey, hold on. Like, let's just define what fun is. I don't want to get this wrong. Like, what's fun? He's like, oh, take it out on the interstate. Go have fun. I'm like, okay, let's do that. And so I did. It was awesome. And I can remember cleaning that car in my driveway and just being like, this is like just out there waxing it. I'm buffing it. I'm putting leather care on the seats. And the entire time, I'm just loving getting to do that. Like, sure, I was cleaning a car. Most of us view that as a chore, and on some days it is. But on that day, it wasn't a duty. On that day, it was a delight. On that day, it wasn't drudgery. On that day, it was joy. I was cleaning an Aston Martin. Now, let's talk for a second. I think that horror story helps to illustrate something. We are in the middle of studying the prodigal son. Now, if you're familiar with the prodigal son story, you know that the prodigal son went off to a foreign land, and the prodigal son spent a third of the family's wealth, blew the wealth up, comes home after having a famine, comes home, and the father welcomes him with open arms, forgives what he's done, throws a giant party. It's an incredible, incredible scene. There's only one person who's upset about it, and it's the older brother. So the younger brother squanders a third of the family inheritance off on reckless wild living with prostitutes, we're going to see. And the older brother, in the meantime, was at home serving the father. And the older brother is so upset, he's so mad, and he's throwing a pity party for himself while the father's throwing a real party inside the house for the younger son. Now, let's talk about what the older brother says for just a second. I want to read it to you, and then we'll unpack it. Verse 29 says, look, these many years I've served you, and I've never disobeyed your command, yet you never gave me a young goat that I might celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours came, who has devoured your property with prostitutes, you killed the fattened calf for him. Now let's be honest for a second. That argument makes sense. We talked about that yesterday. That argument makes sense. I mean, the younger son goes and blows the property on prostitutes, and the father kills the best calf in the field for him, while the younger son's out hanging out doing, the older son's out just working hard, and he's like, I never even got a young goat to celebrate. But what we have to remember is what we saw yesterday. In order for the older son to think this way, the older son had to believe something that just isn't true from a biblical standpoint. The older son had to believe that he didn't need the grace of the father like the younger son did. Obviously, the younger son needed grace, forgiveness, love, and mercy. Duh. But the older son thought, oh, I don't need that. I've worked hard. But what we see in his response shows us that the older son needed the grace, love, and mercy of the father, just like the younger son. Let's unpack it. He says, look, these many years I've served you. I've never disobeyed your command. Back to the Aston Martin illustration. He uses the word served, but it could be translated slaved for you. The Christian understands something. The Christian understands that when we give our hearts to Jesus and we begin to follow him, yes, there is absolutely a duty necessary to follow Jesus, but it's a delight. Like doing these devotionals, there's a duty behind that. I want to do this. I want to be disciplined in that. But there's a delight to get to serve others in the name of Jesus. It's the same with preaching. It's the same with counseling. It's the same with a lot of the roles I get to play. Yeah, there are days where it just feels like duty. But so many days, there's the delight in serving the Lord. And what the older son shows us is he doesn't have any delight. He's serving the Father. I'm slaving away for you. It's not like he wants to do it. And what we see is there's anger there. Here's why I believe there's anger there. There's anger there because the older son had expectations, because he thought that by serving the Father, he could get what he wanted, that the Father was like a cosmic Santa Claus. So you go and you serve him the way that you think he needs to be served, and then he's supposed to respond an appropriate way. And when he doesn't respond the way you want him to respond, you get frustrated, you get angry. And people who view God not as a gracious, loving Father who dumps out grace and forgives us, people who view God as this kind of cosmic Santa Claus. Well, God, I prayed, and God, I gave, and God, I went to church, and God, I'm in community group, and I'm serving you. I'm doing all these things, and you won't do this thing for me. If that's the prevailing attitude of your heart, you're viewing God all wrong. You're not seeing him as grace. You're not seeing him as one who dispenses grace. You're seeing him as one who owes you because of the things that you've done. That's the way the older son was acting. And then finally he says this, yet you never gave me a young goat that I might celebrate with my friends. Once again, it sounds like a good argument. If we go back to the younger son, what did the younger son tell the father? The younger son looked at the father and says, Dad, I wish you were dead. I just want your stuff. That's what he did. It was blatant. It was obvious. Dad, I want my inheritance now. In other words, I want you to go ahead and die and just give me my stuff. And then what did the younger son do? He went off to a foreign land and spent it all on his friends. What does the older son say right here? The older son says, Dad, I wanted your stuff to celebrate with my friends. Notice who the older son didn't want at the party. Father, the younger son. In other words, Dad, I wish you were dead. I just want your stuff so I can celebrate with my friends. See, the older son is revealing that the father was a means to an end. It wasn't the father that he was truly after. And what we've got to see, and the reason that this is so helpful for us to see, is we've got to see that even if you're a Christian, there's a tendency for that to live inside you. And if you're not a Christian, but you're kind of this church-going, conservative, righteous person, that's you. Right? Like if you're not trusting in Jesus for your salvation and receiving his grace and you're trying to earn your salvation, I just described you. There's probably a lot of duty and very little delight in following the Lord. There's probably a lot of anger because life inevitably doesn't go the way you want it to. And there's probably this desire that says, God, I want your stuff. I want your blessings. And the way I'm going to go about getting that is by trying to serve you and manipulate you. Hey, God, I gave $100 at church this week. I need that promotion. And you're going to give it to me because I gave you $100. There's so much more to the Christian life. There's so much more freedom and love. Because ultimately what our hearts are searching for isn't the things that God can give us. Those are all blessings and we should rejoice in them, but they're just icing on the cake. The ultimate thing that our hearts need is God himself. And so if you're struggling with the older son syndrome and you are a Christian, just remember it's God that's the treasure. It's God that we're after. It's the relationship with the Father that our hearts were truly made to have. And if you're watching this and you've really never given your heart to Jesus and you're kind of one of those people who thinks, oh yeah, I earned my way to God's favor. Listen, this probably describes you in one way or another. And I want you to understand there's something so much better out there for you in Jesus. So anyway, I hope this was helpful for everybody. I hope you guys have a great Wednesday, and I will see you soon.